Guilty Gear is a series that's never been afraid to experiment and try something new. From highly technical 2D anime fighter, to 4-player party game, to a 3D hack and slash MOBA thing. And even now with how big of a departure Strive is from the rest of the series. And that's cool and all, but what if you wanted to play a dumb little Guilty Gear spinoff on the bus? Well, don't worry, Daisuke has you covered there, because there are a lot of weird little portable Guilty Gear games for us to appreciate. The first portable Guilty Gear is a real interesting one, as it's totally original. Released in 2001 for the WonderSwan color, you know, Bandai's Japanese only handheld, the WonderSwan, Guilty Gear Petite is a real charming and super deformed take on the Guilty Gear X formula. I love the way this game looks. The sprite work is top notch and it wears its portable status right on its sleeve. It's not trying to be anything that it's not. Guilty Gear Petite only uses 2 buttons, so just like its visuals, it keeps it simple but honestly feels pretty good. Buttons and movement work how you'd expect them to, and if you're familiar with the series, it's easy to pull off some cute little combos. What really impresses me about Petite is how it has a full command list and a training mode with actual basic dummy options. It's pretty sad, but I just don't expect quality of life like that from an old fighting game like this, especially a portable one on the WonderSwan. Most notably about Petite is that it has an original character that's never made any other non-WonderSwan appearances. The little chibi nurse Fanny. Fanny carries around a giant syringe and attacks with various different medical equipment, and has a similar moveset to Faust, who her story implies she has some kind of connection to. Arc System Works put out a character poll to see which characters they should add into Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator back in 2015, which surprisingly had Fanny as an option. So at least she hasn't been totally forgotten, and maybe we'll see her again someday. But speaking of characters, Guilty Gear Petite only has 7 of them, which is what I expect from a game like this, but Arc System Works pulled a Capcom and released a Guilty Gear Petite 2 just 9 months later in the same year, which more than doubled its roster to 15. The 2 games are basically the same, so if you want to check one out, definitely check out Petite 2. There's a good chance one of your favorite Guilty Gear characters is in it, and I think this game is a real cute novelty. Okay, so for our next portable Guilty Gear, Arc System Works took what they did for Petite and did the complete opposite. Released on the Game Boy Advance in 2002, Guilty Gear X Advance Edition didn't want to take the simple stylized approach like Petite. It wanted to be the actual arcade game in your pocket. And obviously, to do that, there had to be concessions. Guilty Gear Advance sprites are super tiny and compressed, and obviously have a lot less frames of animation than the arcade counterpart. But as bad as that sounds, I also kind of really like it. Not on the same level as Petite, but there's just something so dumb and ambitious about doing it this way that I appreciate. I don't know how to explain it, but with how small the sprites are and how dead and lifeless the stages are, Guilty Gear Advance has this very weird off feeling that is just kinda cool. Every character from Guilty Gear X besides Robokai makes an appearance, and the gameplay is just as crazy and outright broken as the older Guilty Gear titles were. The game is loose and fast, and there is a lot of combo monster can pull off on a 3-inch screen. The Game Boy Advance had 4 buttons, so the Guilty Gear X control scheme could be replicated perfectly, as the series didn't have a dedicated desk button yet at this point. Most interestingly though, is that Guilty Gear X Advance has a tag mode where you pick 2 characters, and when one is defeated, your other character runs out. And it has another 3-on-3 tag mode which is similar to the King of Fighters. I kinda wish that mainline Guilty Gear had this. Oh, and it also has a decent training mode too. Honestly, I think this game is pretty cool. I wonder how many people got into the series through this game, cause as a kid, I probably would have loved it if I had tried it. Alright, now we're really getting our hands dirty. I love the DS. It's probably my favorite handheld ever, but man, there was some bad gimmicky stuff released for it, and that's exactly what we have here. Released in 2006, Guilty Gear Dust Strikers is it's a game alright. As you can see, Dust Strikers is trying to be a Guilty Gear platform fighter like Smash. Gameplay takes place between both of the DS screens, and is loose and all over the damn place. Dust Strikers has weak and strong attack buttons, Dust and special move buttons which let you do different special moves while holding different directions like in Smash, and even a Roman cancel button if you want to get crazy with your combos. But honestly, the game doesn't feel very good, and I kinda end up just mashing strings together to get things done. Items appear throughout the match, but all they really do is give some kind of status boost or create explosions, so they feel kinda pointless. And with how big the stages are, and how small the characters are on the screen, it just becomes a giant mess that begs you to ask why this was even made. When you're bored of mashing through arcade and story mode, you can edit your own Robokai like in Guilty Gear Isuka, which is kinda cool I guess. Or play the mandatory random minigames that every DS game had, but look. Dust Strikers feels like it has no weight to it, and it's just not very fun. Maybe if I had 3 other brave souls to play the game with, I could see its true potential, but I doubt it. And there are much better fighting games on the DS that I could be spending my time with. And back to some good stuff with the 2006 PSP release of Guilty Gear, Judgement. This is probably the best portable Guilty Gear release, because it's a combo pack that contains a full port of Guilty Gear XX Reload. I'm sure this was the gateway drug for a lot of Guilty Gear fans getting into the series, and was a great way to actually practice the game on the go. Except for the weird fact that the American release of Judgement got Guilty Gear XX Reload, while the Japanese release got the updated Guilty Gear XX/ for no explicable reason. But hey, we'll take it at this point. But as I said earlier, Guilty Gear Judgement is a combo pack, and alongside the actual fighting game, we have a full-fledged beat 'em up to go along with it. Judgement has the player running through Europe fighting a bunch of people that have been turned into monsters by the evil Raymond? Yeah, Raymond. Let's go with Raymond. Punch, kick, slash, and jump with 21 characters through 20 short stages, getting dumb combo chains and filling up the screen with crazy hitboxes. Judgement is honestly a lot of fun. The gameplay is fast and hitting and chaining moves feel seamless and good, and the game is very generous in what it lets you combo. This is a beat 'em up that really gives the power to the player. But of course bosses can be dumb and cheap, but that's a genre staple, right? With how short the stages are, it can be quite addictive to rack up combos and try different characters to see what you could pull off. In my opinion, this is probably the best beat 'em up side game a fighting game has ever done. So, sorry Tekken Force. Not only does this game have the XX cast, but the original final boss Judgement is also playable, and he could blow up the entire screen with attacks. These portable games just get all the exclusive characters, huh? Guilty Gear Judgement is pretty cool. The fact that it has both the beat 'em up and the fighting game makes this a pretty great package for the casual and hardcore fan. Now there is one more portable Guilty Gear game, but it's a random North American exclusive DSiWare game. Pro Jumper Guilty Gear Tangent is a platformer starring the Guilty Gear mascot Chimaki. You know Chimaki, right? Well, yeah, me neither. But apparently Daisuke said he's the mascot, so we're going with it. There's not a ton of info about this game online, and DSiWare emulation is hard and almost non-existent, so I haven't played it myself, but I mean it looks okay. This is probably the weirdest and most forgettable Guilty Gear game ever, and that's saying something when Overture exists. So that wraps up our brief look at portable Guilty Gear games. As goofy or compromised as they might seem, these games are probably giant gateways into the series for many people, and I think ports like these hold important spots in fighting game history. So whether you're playing Strive or Guilty Gear Petite, have fun. Thanks.